15-day wait on handguns and rifles you can take right now.
He was once the embodiment of strength.
From the United States by Austria, one and only, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
The man who shook Hollywood with the blockbuster legacy of the Terminator. And then they promised he would return, not as a machine built to destroy mankind, but as a true king. The final image of Conan the Barbarian in 1982, showing Arnold Schwarzenegger seated silently upon his throne, waiting for destiny, became a cinematic promise that lingered for 3 decades. When Universal announced The Legend of Conan, fans believed the king would rise once more. But why did that dream project vanish? Who stopped Arnold from reclaiming his throne? And what truly turned the King of Conan into a king without a crown? Before The Legend of Conan ever existed, it began with a myth, not on paper, but in the mind of a generation. In 1982, Conan the Barbarian wasn't just another sword and sorcery movie. It was the coronation of Arnold Schwarzenegger as Hollywood's new titan. His towering frame, his near-wordless performance, and the sheer conviction he carried turned a pulp fantasy into something operatic, primal, and unforgettable. Under John Milius's brutal, poetic direction, Arnold wasn't simply acting, he was forging an archetype. By the mid-1980s, that image of Conan, silent yet unstoppable, had become a cultural relic, a snapshot of masculinity that defined an era. It launched Arnold from bodybuilder to box office monarch, opening the gates for the Terminator, Commando, and Predator. Each film built upon the mythos of the indestructible man, a creature of iron will and raw muscle. But deep down, Arnold himself always regarded Conan as the origin. It all started there, he would later say, recalling how the film transformed him from an Austrian outsider into a global icon. As the years passed, the legend aged with him. The final frame of Conan the Barbarian. The older, wiser king sitting alone on his throne refused to fade from public memory. Fans saw it not as an ending, but as a prophecy. They waited, year after year, for that story to continue. Arnold, too, carried the image within him. Even during his years as California's governor, he often mentioned the idea of returning to the role, older, battle-worn, and human. When Universal finally approached him in 2012, everything seemed to align. He wasn't just reprising a role, he was reclaiming a destiny. The pitch, unforgiven with a sword, mirrored his own life. A warrior past his prime, confronting legacy and mortality. It wasn't nostalgia, it was poetic closure. The king was ready to rise again, but as Hollywood would soon learn, even kings are not immune to the politics of power. Momentum surged like it hadn't in decades. When The Legend of Conan was officially announced in 2012, the energy around it felt almost mythic. Universal Pictures had the rights. Chris Morgan, the mind behind Fast and Furious, was attached as writer and producer, and Arnold Schwarzenegger was back, ready to finish what began 30 years earlier. The media called it a return to the throne. And for once, that wasn't a metaphor. From the start, the creative direction was crystal clear. Ignore everything except Milius's original vision. The sequel would pick up where the 1982 film left off, with an aged Conan reflecting on battles, regrets, and the heavy crown of a kingdom built through blood. The tone wasn't meant to be campy or nostalgic. It was Shakespearean, tragic, and weathered. Morgan described it as unforgiven with a sword. A story not about conquest, but consequence. For Arnold, it was more than a movie. It was personal redemption. After leaving politics and returning to Hollywood, he longed for a role that acknowledged his years, his scars, and his humanity. This wasn't about chasing youth. It was about embracing legacy. He called the project epic, insisting it would be a worthy successor to Milius's masterpiece. To him, Conan wasn't just a character. He was a mirror, reflecting the cost of power and age. Behind the scenes, the team treated the project with reverence. Locations were being scouted in Spain and New Zealand. The studio gave a rare green light for an R-rated fantasy epic, a bold move before Deadpool would prove such films could work. Every piece seemed to fall into place. Fans believed again. For them, this wasn't just a sequel, it was the closing chapter of a cultural myth. And for Arnold, it felt like destiny aligning, the long-awaited chance to sit on the throne promised decades ago. But as history often proves in Hollywood, the higher the climb, the more fragile the crown, and soon the winds of fortune would shift. However, Even before a single frame was shot, the cracks began to show. The same forces that had once promised to resurrect the legend of Conan slowly started to pull it apart. In Hollywood, dreams rarely die in a single blow. They erode piece by piece beneath the weight of hesitation, shifting priorities, and fear. At first, the optimism was real. The script was finished, the creative team was aligned, and Universal appeared committed. But beneath the surface, quiet doubts began to spread among executives. The market was changing. Audiences were gravitating toward superhero franchises and PG-13 spectacles, not grim, blood-soaked epics about aging warriors. The Legend of Conan was expensive, ambitious, and, worst of all, it aimed squarely at an adult demographic that studios had begun to abandon. The warning signs grew louder in 2015. Arnold returned to one of his other legendary roles, the Terminator, Neon Genesis, a film designed to prove that nostalgia could still sell. It didn't. The movie underperformed badly, battered by critics and ignored by younger audiences. Overnight, that failure rewrote the rules for every legacy sequel starring an aging icon. In boardrooms, the Legend of Conan suddenly looked like another Genesis. High cost, old hero, fading brand. For Universal, the risk calculus shifted dramatically. They had once seen Arnold's age as an asset. Now it was a liability. The very thing that gave the film its poetic power became the reason to doubt it. When Jeff Kirschenbaum, the studio executive who had been championing the project, left Universal in mid-2015, the film lost its most crucial defender. Inside the company, no one wanted to inherit a potential disaster. From there, the project entered the infamous purgatory known as development hell. The momentum evaporated. The search for a director stalled. Negotiations slowed. Even with a completed script and Arnold's public enthusiasm, no one at the top wanted to sign the check. The studio began sending mixed messages, calling the story too niche, the budget too large, and even questioning whether the title, The Legend of Conan, sounded right for modern audiences. For Arnold, it was a slow heartbreak. He had poured himself into the project, praising the script, promising fans that filming was imminent, even hinting that the production might take place in Peter Jackson's legendary New Zealand studios. But every few months, the schedule would shift, then silence. When reporters asked, he remained diplomatic, insisting the film was still moving forward. Yet behind closed doors, the king could sense the throne slipping away. Meanwhile, time, that old enemy of heroes, was catching up. Each passing year made the concept harder to sell. A reflective, older Conan could have been revolutionary in 2014. By 2017, it risked feeling irrelevant in a market ruled by caped crusaders and cinematic universes. Ironically, just months after Universal shelved The Legend of Conan, Deadpool and Logan proved that R-rated, mature blockbusters could thrive. But by then, it was too late. The industry had changed, and so had the appetite for risk. In April 2017, Chris Morgan confirmed what fans feared. The film was dead. He called it a heartbreak, revealing that Universal had chosen not to move forward due to budget, market fit, and title concerns. What had begun as a triumphant return had ended in quiet surrender, not with a public cancellation but with silence. No farewell announcement, no official closure, just a dream that slowly dissolved into rumor. Arnold, ever the fighter, refused to let go. He continued to champion the project, reminding interviewers that the script was fantastic and that the fans deserved this movie. But Hollywood had moved on. The throne was empty, and no one wanted to rebuild it. Years later, when streaming giants like Amazon and Netflix acquired the rights to Conan, it seemed the legend might finally find new life. Yet even those attempts crumbled under the same curse. Endless rewrites, shifting leadership, and the unbearable weight of expectation. As director Robert Rodriguez later said, "Sometimes a character carries too much baggage." That was the fate of The Legend of Conan, crushed not by failure, but by history itself. The myth had grown too large, the legacy too heavy, and the shadow of Arnold too long. What began as a dream of poetic closure ended as a cautionary tale of a studio that lost faith, an icon caught between eras, and a king forever waiting to wear his crown. In the end, the story of The Legend of Conan became the story of Arnold himself, a man who conquered Hollywood, defied age, and yet, in one haunting unfinished chapter, met the only enemy he could not overpower: time. When The Legend of Conan finally crumbled, it didn't make headlines. It simply faded away, like a myth told one last time around a dying fire. But for Arnold Schwarzenegger, it wasn't just another canceled movie. It was the ghost of an unfinished destiny. After Universal's quiet withdrawal in 2017, the project drifted from studio to studio like a cursed relic. Amazon tried to resurrect it as a prestige TV series, even attaching Game of Thrones veterans Miguel Sapochnik and Ryan Condal. Then Netflix bought the rights, promising a grand universe of films and shows. Yet nothing ever materialized. Each attempt collapsed under the same invisible weight: corporate turnover, creative disagreements, and an unspoken truth whispered in every meeting. No one could truly replace Arnold. Even he admitted the strange curse of ownership that haunted the character. "There's a young guy who owns the rights," he once said, "and he's still trying to find his way in Hollywood." It was a rare glimpse of frustration from a man who built his empire on control. Despite multiple completed scripts and unwavering enthusiasm, Arnold had to watch as Conan, the role that made him immortal, slipped permanently out of his grasp. For the industry, the story of the legend of Conan became a case study in lost opportunity. It revealed how timing, ego, and corporate caution could destroy even the most promising of legacies. But for fans, it became something more, a symbol of what Hollywood had lost in its chase for safe, franchised perfection. Today, the image remains: an old king seated on his throne, eyes fixed on a horizon that will never come. Arnold's crown may have been taken by time and executives, but in the minds of those who grew up watching him swing that sword, he still rules. The king without a crown, but never without a legacy. In the end, the legend of Conan became more than a lost film. It became a mirror reflecting the fate of its own hero. Both Conan and Arnold stood at the twilight of their empires, facing time, legacy, and the silence that follows glory. The project's demise wasn't just a failure of business, it was a reminder that even legends can be undone by hesitation and fear. Yet perhaps that is what makes it timeless. Like the final frame of Conan the Barbarian, we still see him there, the old king waiting, unbowed, unbroken. The story may never be filmed, but it has already been told in whispers, in what-ifs, in the collective memory of everyone who once believed a king would rise again. Arnold never needed the throne, because in the hearts of millions, he already sat upon it.